we'll focus on football first. This Saturday at 2 o'clock in Mine Temple Tuohy, the Limerick senior footballers take on Tipperary with a chance to reach the McGrath Cup final for the first time since 2020 when they were victorious in it. I suppose there was none in 2021, so I suppose a second final in 3 goes. But before we get into that game, we'll touch on the game against Waterford in McNeville Park this day last week now. I suppose when you think about it, comprehensive win, 4-14 to 9 points. Slow enough to get going. I think it's fair to say it was it 1-6 to 7 at half time. There was only 2 points in it at half time, but really kicked on in the second half. Carl Downs' debutant got 2 goals, was really impressive. It's his jersey now to lose. I thought Barry Coleman at wing back was very, very good as well. As always, Keane Sheehan in midfield made it look like men against boys at time, but a lot of positional switches as well, Matthew. Paul Maher gone up to wing forward. Killian Ryan was full forward. Brian Fanning was out at centre back. Even Keane, has played wing forward and wing back. He was in midfield. Carl Downs is on the wing. Probably used to seeing him in the field for KP. A lot of positional changes. Took their time to get going, but as a first game under Ray Dempsey, you'd have to be really, really pleased with it as a Limerick man.
Yeah, no, I didn't see the game, Jack, but obviously from what I heard and reading the reports of it, it was every bit as comprehensive as it looks. And I suppose the reason why it was probably so close in the first half is that Waterford had the assistance of the elements.
Yeah, true.
Which kept them in touch. Now, I've seen, I've also read the narrative going around that it was an extremely experimental Waterford side that the former Ballylanders manager, Efi Fitzgerald, put out. He's the manager of Waterford now. But Waterford have suffered a similar defeat to Tipperary since in the competition and are out of it. So I think Waterford football, like they were on the bottom 2 teams last year, Jack, in the league, were they? Bottom 3?
I think so, yeah.
They're a county that are struggling football-wise now at the moment. And I'm sure that while Ray Dempsey and his management team will be very, very pleased with the result and anybody connected with Limerick football, but I don't think they will be reading too much into it. A better barometer of where Limerick's early season form is and, how far down the road they are in preparation for the trip to Derry in early next month will come in Temple Tuohy on Sunday when they take on Tipperary. Limerick, well, they have a good record against Tipperary in recent years. Beat them in the championship last year. Now they did lose to them in the McGrath Cup in the third round last year in McNeville Park, but only lost by a point. And that I thought that was a performance where Limerick turned the corner for the simple reason, even though they were defeated, because they were coming off a drubbing by Kerry in the first round, and it just showed how Billy Lee and his backroom team had regrouped Limerick so quickly that they almost scalped Tipperary. But when it came to the championship, sure, we know how Limerick fared in the championship. That famous win down in Clare, then the win over Tipperary, but the unfortunate loss to Kerry in the Munster final. But I'm not reading too much into what happened in McNeville Park in the game against Waterford, Jack. It was good to see people being altering the pack around. See Brian Fanning coming in at centre back, as you said. Paul Maher moving up into the forwards. Killian Ryan, Adrian Enright at corner forward. Adrian Enright has nearly played in every position from midfield up at this stage. And it just gives you a sense of the his versatility, that he can fit into these different positions. So, I'm not reading much into it, as I said, Jack, but I certainly would be reading an awful lot more into the performance and the outcome of the game against Tipperary on Saturday in Temple Tuohy. And it's an opportunity for Limerick, and I'm sure Ray Dempsey and his management team will want to get as much game time as possible into his side prior to making that long jaunt to Owen Beg for the opening round of the league in about 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, I was going to say that too, because obviously if they beat Tipperary, they'll qualify for the McGrath Cup final, which is the 18th of January, so this day next week. And I think when you take over a team, you want as many competitive games as possible. McGrath Cup final will probably be Cork, I'd imagine. They had a big victory over Kerry. You'd fancy them to continue that against Clare, and then it won't
Yeah,
make.
the permutation there, Jack, is that Clare need to win by 7 points.
Yeah, against Cork, who had 11 or 12 points on Kerry. For me, that's very hard to see happening unless Cork have a raft of players playing Sigerson, and they do, but they have
They
an
do,
awful lot
but
of experience. So I'd
um,
imagine it's going to be Cork if Limerick get through. But to your point, for Limerick, it'll be a case of we'll get to McGrath Cup final, we'll see who we're going to play, but it'll be another competitive game because they will know. Is it the 28th of January when they're in Derry? They are going to have their hands full. Regardless what happens in the McGrath Cup, Derry are aiming for the league and they'll feel they're a Division 1 team. So Limerick have to be ready, and the more games is the way you do that, I think.
yeah, well, Derry are a team, of course, that are protesting till the cows come home that they were the unlucky team in the championship last year, and I suppose there's a certain element of truth in that. So, but it's a huge challenge. Like you've Derry in the opening round, and you've Dublin at 7 days later. So, like it's absolutely crucial that they get as much game time as possible. And but first of all, to get a game probably against Cork, and it will be at a Cork venue, possibly Mallow, maybe. Because the last time they met in the McGrath Cup final, it was in the Gaelic grounds as a double header, you will recall,
Yep.
when Limerick completed a double over Cork on the night. So, yeah, I think Red MC, it'll be important in two senses, just to get the extra game, but also to benchmark his side against an opponent from Division 2. Irrespective of whether it's Cork or Clare, both of them are in Division 2.
Yeah,
So
very true.
if you beat Tipperary, you're going to get a game against a team that's in your division in the football league, and he will be very, very keen to see how his charges match up with teams from that division. It'll give him some indication as to where Limerick are at in terms of their readiness for Division 2 football.
Yeah,
Because you must remember that these competitions, Jack, are being dismissed as just. I hear people saying they're only pre-season. That's not the case at all. These are serious competitions in that they lead straight into the league.
yeah, no,
So
yeah, it is. They've all said it. I was talking to Donald O'Grady and Nicky Quaid before the hurling starts, and these competitions take on more relevance because they are straight into the league, and there's less time to do everything in the GA calendar now because they're not allowed to play till January, and it'll be over in the middle of July. So I mean, there's only a 6-month window. So the time for I suppose bedding in players, and then you have a 6 or 7 week training camp. They're gone. Like you kind of need to be nailing your colour to the match straight away. But I was very disappointed with Waterford. I will say that it was probably one of the worst performances I've ever seen for an intercounty side. Now you said there was experimental, and Limerick were good in the night, so I mean they both play into it. But for Ray Dempsey, it's so far so good.
yeah.
Regardless who you're playing, you want to win the first round. That's what they did. But Tipperary will definitely be far more of a test this weekend, and it'll be way more easy to kind of gauge where Limerick are at. And please God, we'll have
Absolutely, and it's an ideal situation for Ray Dempsey if they can get over it. You play Waterford, you play Tipperary, who would be a level above Waterford Division 4, Tipperary Division 3, and now you have a possibility if you get over that, and you should be getting over it as a Division 2 team.
Yeah,
you'll be get to play a game against a team at your own level.
yeah, and that is a very good point you make there because if it is Clare or Cork, they are going to play them later on this year, and Limerick will be looking to consolidate the place in Division 2. I think it's fair to say this year, with the likes of Derry and Dublin and Kildare at the other end of the scale. So if you get a win over them early in the McGrath Cup final, that would bode really, really well for Limerick. So we'll keenly watch the game this weekend, and hopefully Red MC side can make it 2 in a row, and that we'll have a McGrath Cup final to look forward to.
Jack, the stakes are higher than people might think in this game,
Oh, definitely. It's important that Limerick get as much games.
Dismissing it as just a preseason game is, it's far more serious than that. Excuse me.
As you said, as we both said, you want games this time of year, and by winning, you get games. So please God, Limerick can make it 2 from 2.